So I'm happy to jump in if you are, Manish.
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, lovely. Well, thanks everyone for joining. Good morning. Hope everyone's day's going really well. Um, just a quick heads up, this is obviously going to be recorded. We'll share the link afterwards as well, so you can watch it back at any time. By way of introduction, my name is Lewis. I'm the account executive here at Qmulus, and joining me today is Manish, who is the partner account manager here at Webexpenses. We're here to give you a little bit of an introduction to the Webexpenses system. So as many as you might know, Qmulus has been a Sage partner now for nearly 14 years. And we've partnered with Webexpenses to bring their powerful expense management tool to Sage customers. Before we jump in, we are having a little bit of fun today. We'll be running a giveaway with some of Webexpenses merchandise during today's session, so stick around to the end for your chance to get involved. Always nice to get a mug or a couple of pens. I'll shortly hand over to Manish, who'll take you through the software itself. At the end of the session, we'll have time for a bit of a Q&A as well, so feel free to note down any questions we have as you go along. We'll be happy to answer them. Or if you didn't want to talk about it on the webinar itself, we will be handing out an email which you can get in touch with us directly, and we can answer any of those questions or set up a call. So with that, I'll pass over to Manish.
Thank you, Lewis. So yeah, as Lewis introduced me, I'm the partner account manager at Webexpenses. So with our partners, any support that they need in terms of understanding the technology a little bit more, or just having an overview, I'm here to help. So any queries that you may have for Lewis can come to me directly. But just to give you a bit of an overview of what we're going to be going through today. So, and the main base of today's webinar will be a demonstration of how our system works and how our system will benefit you. But before I begin, I'm just going to go through a little bit of an overview of who we are as Webexpenses. So straight away at the bottom, you can see so we've been in the industry for over 24 years, and at the bottom you can see we've also been a market leader within the expense management and spend management space during that time. And we've helped over 2,000 customers. We have 300,000 global users that we host, and we also have over 1 billion expenses processed as well. So the reason that customers choose us and the reason that we've been a market leader for so long is because we have risk-free implementation. So through the implementation stage and during the time of being our customer, we tailor the system for your needs. So it's not something that you just pay a subscription and then you get something that's sort of out of the box and then you kind of have to just work with it. Depending on your requirements and what it is or how you need the system set up for yourselves, we sort of set up a one-to-one plan and make sure that all the requirements that you have are met. It's fast and easy adoption. So again, from the moment that we roll out and we tailor everything towards yourself, we also ensure that we meet the timelines that you need. We say that the average time for implementation is below 10 weeks, but we normally aim for 6 to 8. And typically, whenever it comes to actually taking up your time, we don't really need much from you once we gather the requirements. And then once you are our customer, it doesn't matter if you come from Qmulus or anyone else, you get full support. You get an account manager aligned to yourselves, and also you get tons of training just to ensure that you're comfortable to use the system before we sort of set you out to be free. So just to give you an idea of what it is that an expense management tool can do and what we do, what we've done for our customers in the past, and also how automating that expense management process will actually benefit yourselves. At the moment, if you haven't got an expense management solution in place, I can only assume that you're either doing things manually. And when I say manually, I mean, maybe mailing receipts, or maybe your employees are mailing receipts to yourselves for you to process, or they're filling out a form on an Excel spreadsheet, or they're emailing you the receipts, in which case then you then need to fill out a form. And basically the main objective through expenses is just making sure that everyone's paid the amount they're meant to be paid. And within that, you may also have just sort of like a PDF document with all your policies, in which people then need to follow, and then you need to ensure that they're following those policies as well. And overall, that whole process, it takes up a lot of time. It becomes quite tedious, it's time consuming, and you also then don't get to do a lot with your expense management data. So how we help our customers and how we would help yourselves is we get to give you that time back by automating the entire process and also making it very seamless. We're able to give you that time back so then you can actually focus on the business needs and what you're meant to be doing on a day-to-day rather than just processing receipts. We also help and we kind of automate this process for you, and which I'll show in the demonstration on your VAT reclaim. I can imagine if you're doing things manually at the moment, you don't get to do a lot with your data. And because most of your time is just spent making sure that everyone's reimbursed for the amount they're meant to be, so then you don't get to, actually claim back on a lot of your VAT. And you can see a quote here. This is from one of our customers. Webexpenses probably saved us around 15K a year. And that was just from VAT reclaim. That was literally just because they had the ability now to easily every single year or every quarter to claim back on their VAT. And then again, coming back to the previous point of policy enforcement. So saving you time, saving you effort. You'll see throughout the demonstration that the policies are enforced from the start, essentially. And it just helps ensure that your employees know what the policies are. You can set a spend limit. And also fraud avoidance. So making sure that everything that's being processed and all the receipts that are in the system is for what it's meant to be, and someone's not trying to get an early payday from putting a higher amount or spending on what they shouldn't be spending on. So that is a very quick overview of who we are at Webexpenses and also what an expense management tool can do for yourselves. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing here and just share my screen so we can start the product demonstration. And as Lewis said, if you have any questions, feel free just to pop them in the chat. I probably won't be able to see them, but then Lewis can, at the end, just read them out and then we can answer them for you.
Absolutely.
Cool. Okay, cool. So now I'm just going to take you through the product demonstration. So as we do this, just to give you an overview of what the journey is going to be today, I'm going to start off as if I was just a claimant. Maybe I was traveling somewhere and how I would process a receipt to then how does that get approved? And then what happens to that data, or what can the finance team do with that data to then not only process the claim, but also have a look at some of the reporting suite that we have as well. So this is our Webexpenses mobile application, and this is available on the App Store and on Google Play. And essentially, once the claimant logs in, they're presented with this nice and lovely colorful spend wheel. So on here, we can see that we have an unpaid total on my out-of-pocket expenses of £100. And there are submitted claims, there have been claims that have been rejected, and there's also been claims that have been approved. Now, if I scroll to the right here, we can see this is also where my credit card unpaid total is. So currently we have a direct link with MasterCard, Visa, and Amex. So essentially all you would need to do is just link your, if you do have a company credit card at the moment, all you would do is link it, and then we can have a direct feed into the system, and then also a direct feed into the individual claimant as well. So what I'm going to do now, let's say, for example, I was on a business trip and I was traveling and I just wanted to expense a coffee or a drink. Then what I would do is just go ahead and hit that plus icon, go onto receipt and just take a picture of a receipt like so. And then now what is going to happen is we've got OCR technology that runs in the back end. So essentially what it's done is it scanned the information on the receipt, which we can see here. So it scanned the date, it scanned the amount, and it's also scanned a description. Now the description that is taken at the moment is the address. I can change this if I want to, but we can see here that the blue box is that's the information that is scanned for me. Now, I'm going to process this as an out-of-pocket expense, but if this was a credit card receipt, as I showed you before, if it was from a credit card transaction, then I would go ahead and hit this credit card receipt toggle here. And then essentially what that will do is that will now, once I save everything in this receipt, that will link to one of the credit card transactions automatically. So as we fill out all the details for this receipt, I'm going to go ahead and just choose a category. And then over here, I'm going to choose subsistence because this was just for a drink. And then once I've chosen this category, you can see here that there's a yellow toggle. If I click on that, it now shows me the category policy. So as I was mentioning before, um, and it's the same with companies I've worked in for in the past as well, where a lot of the policies you have in place are on a PDF document and you have to know them, or your manager has to know them. And people get them wrong all the time because people misinterpret the information on there. Whereas now you can set the category, you can set the policy to category level, so they're warned of what the category is from the moment they're processing the receipt, which then saves you time on having to double check if everything is the way it's meant to be. And from here, you can set a spend limit of £25, and also you can ensure that a receipt must be attached. But this is fully customizable, so you can make the category policy whatever it is or whatever you want it to be, and you can fully customize this text box. We do have two different type of policies. So we have something called a soft policy and a hard policy. So for example, I have a spend limit of £25 here. That is a hard policy. So if I was to go over £25, it wouldn't even let me process this, and it would make me go back and change the details. A soft policy will still allow me to process it, but it will come up with a warning that it's still out of policy. So if I'm happy with all that information, I'll scroll down. We also support different exchanges. So we support, depending on whether you may have offices within, Ireland or different parts of Europe or anywhere else in the world, or maybe there's just a business travel, maybe there was an event on that you needed to travel to, then we can go ahead and support the different currencies as well. Over here, we have something called project. So this is what we call a tracking field. We can also link this to your ERP, depending on which ERP you have in place at the moment. But essentially, all this is another way to be able to understand what the money is going towards, essentially. So we have this at the moment set as project. You can set this as vendor. You can set this as client. You can set this as a specific team within your company. But essentially, all it does is it just allows you to gain a little bit more insight as to where a lot of the money is being spent. So if I scroll down, we can also choose the VAT rate. So we currently have VAT rate set to the category level. So it's because this is subsistence, most of the time it'll be food, drink, or whatever. We set the VAT rate to 20%, but you can also customize the VAT rates. So you can have multiple different VAT rates as well. And you can add attendees. So let's say, for example, I was going out for a meal and I was taking out one of my clients, then I would add them as an attendee so it doesn't look like I've just spent £50 on food just for myself. You can also split the receipt. So if I was out for a company trip and part of that, I went out for a meal, but there were certain things, maybe I got a dessert or maybe I got some drinks that I don't necessarily want to expense, I can still use that receipt, but all I would do is just split the amount. So if I'm happy with everything there, I'll go ahead and hit the green tick there. And I'm going to add this to a claim. And that's uploading. It's saving all of the receipt details. And we've already got some claims in place. I've already set one up for today's demo called September. So I'm going to save it into there. And now we can see the claim item has been saved. And now we can also see that the personal spend wheel has been updated, as now there is also an open claim. So what I'm going to do, so I'm just going to go into here. So now I've shown you how, if you were just out and about traveling, how how your employees would also just scan a receipt and add it to a claim. But I'm also going to show you business mileage. So what I'm going to do is just go into claim item here, choose a category, business mileage, select a date, and then from here just add a description. And then what I can do is, instead of having to work out the miles myself or take it from Google Maps or Waze or whatever they may be using for their travel, and actually working out how many miles were spent traveling, I can go ahead and use this map. So we have a direct integration with Bing Maps. So even if it was somewhere, it was a particular office or it was a particular business that they were traveling to, they can also search the same way they would in Google Maps as well. But essentially all they would do is just choose a starting destination and an end destination, and they can also add multiple destinations if they want to as well. So within here, you can also add your favorite. So you might choose your home address as a favorite, or maybe a particular office, depending if there's somewhere that you're traveling to more often than not. So what I would do is just choose these two as they're on my favorites already, hit go, and now we can see that it's calculated the route for us. Now, you're probably wondering, okay, that's great, but it's the UK and we have a lot of road closures, and especially when I'm using Waze, it decides to take me some way. It's just specific routes that I don't necessarily want to take, which means that the amount of miles traveled during that time has gone up. If that is the case, then all you have to do is just zoom in, drag, and you can just drag the map like so, and you can customize the route depending on which route it took. And then once you're happy with everything, you can go ahead and hit the save button. If this was return journey, you would hit return. And now we can see that it's calculated the number of miles, and it's multiplied that by the mileage rate that we have in place. So the mileage rate that we have set at the moment, and this is also company wide, is the HMRC mileage rate, which is 45 pence a mile. You can set custom mileage rates. You can also have multiple different mileage rates depending on how you calculate it yourselves. And then we can also choose what type of vehicle this is. So we can choose the type of vehicle within business mileage, or whether it's personal car, or if they're driving, but also if they're traveling by taxi. And then what this does is it essentially calculates the amount of carbon emissions used during this trip. So I know it's becoming quite popular, and especially when within the market, when we're talking to a lot of our customers and when we talk to other businesses, the ESG report that they have to submit at the end of every year isn't necessarily something that they're looking at the moment, but it is something they would love to do and they're looking to do. And I know it is becoming quite a popular thing. Essentially, when it comes to tracking the carbon emissions used on a trip, so it does this via rail, by flight, by bus, taxi, bike, car, and essentially, all you have to do in order to actually run a report on this is to run the report at the end of every year. For in terms of claimants, they don't need to add any extra information. They're just processing the claim the same way they would always process the claim. But that is an included feature with what within the solution. It's just part of what we offer. So then, if we're happy with everything here, we'll go ahead and hit that green tick. And now that's going to save to the claim. And before I process this, or before I submit this, sorry, we can see here that there's another red toggle. So if I click on that, it said that a receipt is required for this item, which essentially means this is out of policy. And this is going back to what I said previously, where this is a soft policy. So it'll still let me submit. But even before I'd submit, it's telling me, it's warning me that, this might not get accepted because there's no receipt attached to this. So if I'm happy with everything there, let me go ahead and submit that. And then when I go to submit, we can see here at the bottom, it said, did you claim mileage? If I tick that, essentially what shows here is a duty of care statement. So depending on within the business, if, when people are traveling to different parts using car, whether it's a private vehicle or a company vehicle, you can essentially just add a duty of care statement. And again, this is customizable, so you can change this to how you want it to, or to say to what you want it to say. But essentially, it just covers yourselves, that the person that is driving is fully insured, they're MOT'd, they're legal to drive, and they're safe to drive. And it just gives you that extra layer of coverage as well. So I'll go ahead and choose private vehicle, hit the green tick. And now that claim has been submitted. And if I go back to the personal spend wheel, we can see now that the amount of claims that I have submitted have been updated, and the amount has been updated as well. So what I'm going to do is just to, go through the entire process. I'm going to go ahead and switch profiles into an approver. So what I'm using here is something called a proxy access. All it does is essentially allows one person to have control of multiple accounts. So if, for example, there was a manager who was on holiday for 2-3 weeks and it was coming up to the end of the month and we needed to make sure all the claims were processed, you may give another manager or a finance person access to the account just to ensure that everything is being approved still, even if someone is off. So I'm going to go ahead and switch over into the approval. And we can see here at the bottom that there are 2 claims that need approving. And we can see here at the bottom, September, that is the one that we just submitted now. And within here, if I want to, I can go into here, I can have a look at all of the details, look at the receipts just to make sure that everything is what it's supposed to be. But we can also see here on the right, on this toggle here, that the receipt is required. So we can still see, even as an approver, that this is out of policy. And if I wanted to go into it, I can go and have a look. And also, if I just wasn't happy with the fact that this doesn't have a receipt because I know finance may not process this, because then we can't claim back on our VAT for the mileage, then I can just go ahead and reject the single line item and then still process everything else, just to ensure that everything else is being paid out the same, at the same time, and we're not delaying anything too much, but this one specific line item, I would like a receipt for it. But for the sake of the demo, we're just going to go ahead and approve everything. And then now that's been approved, what I'm going to do is just switch over to my desktop just to show you how now how we would process that claim and also how everything looks on in terms of reporting as well. So give me just 1 second. And as I said, any questions that you have, feel free to just put in the chat box and then we can answer everything at the end. Right. Okay, so now this is how you would log on onto Webexpenses. So we do support single sign-on. So if you have a single sign-on that you wanted to use, we do support that. And we also support multi-factor authentication as well. So if you wanted to set it up via maybe Google Authenticator or Microsoft Authenticator, just to give that extra layer of protection, we do also have that as an option. So as we log in as a finance lead or anyone who works in the accounts team, this is what you're presented with. Now, as soon as you log in, this is just to give you an indication of what we can do with some of our data. And we can see this nice, lovely, colorful dashboard, but what's actually in here. So we can see that there are currently some open claims. There have been claims that have been submitted. And it just essentially all this does is when we're running the reports in the background, it just gives us an indication, an illustration, sorry, of exactly kind of what's been going on. So for example, we want to see who the top 10 spenders are. And we do again see this being quite popular. Sometimes you do need to name and shame. If a lot of money is being spent, you want to see who's been spending and why the money's been spent so much, so that when we have budget for the next quarter, that we're actually staying within the budget that we've been given. So yeah, so we can have a look at who the top 10 spenders are. We can also have a look at some of the categories. So again, which categories are producing the most amount of expenditure. Maybe it might be client entertainment, it might be mileage, it might be hotels. But again, it just gives a bit of an illustration of what's been going on over this time period, how long people have been spent actually reviewing claims before processing them, the amount of travel claims. You can also have a look at some of the project work. So again, this is what I showed earlier with one of our tracking fields, where it might be project work, it might be client work, it might be individual teams, but we can pretty much, customize this to make it look like exactly how you want it to look like. And also top 5 out of policy approvers. Now, I know people love to name and shame to see who's been processing the most amount of policies. The most amount of claims that are out of policy. So, for example, the claim that I just processed now, that was an out of policy claim. Then my name would be up here with Ken Peters also. But this is just to give you an idea of like some of the things that you can do with the data once we're actually processing all the claims. It's not just about making sure that people are reimbursed. It's about being able to give you more visibility and control of of everything else that's being spent. So just for the sake of today's demonstration, I'm going to go up to here to claims to process, just so I can take you through the entire approval. So we can see here September, that is the one that I just approved now. So if I go into here, we can have a look at everything. So as the accounts and finance team, we pretty much get the final say. So before anything gets processed into the claim for payment, we can go in, have a look, and that final level of control is essentially being able to change anything. Perhaps this wasn't linked to the correct project, perhaps the amount wasn't right, maybe they got the VAT wrong, or maybe we just want to have a look at the receipt to make sure the amount on the receipt actually matches to the amount that they've put in. And again, maybe they've had service charge that we don't necessarily want to claim VAT on. But we can have a look at everything. We can change anything that we need to. Again, that final level of control. We can also go up into here and have a look at any notes that have been left before it's actually got to me, or maybe, a single line item has been rejected and we've been sending notes to each other. But we can also have a look at the audit trail just to understand exactly what's been going on with this claim. Again, giving you that final bit of visibility. And again, we can also see here, if I go into this toggle, that this is out of policy. So there's pretty much from the claimant to the approver to the finance team, if something is out of policy, you are constantly being told, so that it almost eliminates any excuses or any risk of constant claims or loads of receipts being processed that may be out of policy or past the spend limit. So if we're happy with everything here, we'll just go ahead and hit that process button. And then now that is now been sent for payment. So before I show you sort of what we can do or where we can take that journal entry, I'm just going to show you the credit card reconciliation area. So now we've seen, so as again, claims to process, we've seen how it would be for personal spend. But how would it look if they did this exact same thing, but with a credit card? So depending on how your business is set up, I know some companies, if they have a credit card, it's kind of it's on the onus of the employee to look after the credit card and still like make the payments. But a lot of the time it will be every month. As the finance team, you're pretty much making the payments to all of the different, well, the credit card account essentially. So what you would do here is just choose the account. So here it says unaccounted for, but yours would be the last 4 digits of your account number. Then you would have your billing period, which is just your statement period. And then within here, what we would do is just go ahead and have a look at some of the receipts. So within here, we have all the different transactions within this credit card account. So these are the ones that haven't had any claims completely processed against, but we can see that there is a claim here that has been approved, i.e., it's gone through the claimant and it's gone through the approval. And before, again, as the finance person, before I send this for reconciliation so we can actually pay off the credit card and we know we've got all the details for it, I can go ahead and again change everything and just in case some of the details aren't right. Like I said, the VAT rate might not be correct, but I can also go ahead and just have a look at the receipt to make sure the receipt is exactly what it's meant to be. And then if I'm happy with that, I can hit the check button, and now that's been sent for reconciliation. If it's coming up to the end of the statement period as well, and we can see here that there are still some of the receipts haven't had, some of the different transactions haven't had a receipt put against it. If I'm still not happy with that because it's coming up maybe like a week or two towards the statement period and we need to make a payment, I can hit this notify all button, and essentially that would just send a push notification to everyone to make sure, saying basically, please can you hurry up and process your receipts so we can make the payment because we don't want to have to pay any late fees. But essentially, that is the journey from start to finish in terms of, you know, taking a picture of a receipt as you're on the go, processing the receipt, making a claim, and then approving the claim. And now that's been sent for payment. Depending on the different um, finance system that you might have in place at the moment, we also have integrations. So we will, if you have more questions, depending on the system you have on any integrations, please feel free to reach out because we can have a whole session on that. But just to give you an indication of how now, once everything has been done in web expenses, now, how do we transfer that data out? You would basically just choose your integration here. Transfer status not transferred. You'll choose your start and end date, and then you'd go ahead and just choose the different items that you want to transfer into your ERP system. And it's pretty much as simple as that from start to finish. So again, like I said, everything can be done within web expenses. But then also we also have the option to then send it so then all the payments are in one place. Now, before I wrap up the demonstration, I just want to show you our reporting suite as well. Again, this can be very useful because we have 116 different data points that you can choose from. So pretty much anything that's entered within the Web Expenses platform, we can report on, and we can do so much more with the data. And you can also make custom reports. So I know I have some here on the left, which are pre-populated for myself. But if you wanted to, you can go into here and choose from any of these different data points to pretty much approve to report on. And then, yeah, you can make them completely customizable on how you want it to be. And then, of course, we have these already set. So if you wanted to report on the carbon emissions, you can do so. You can make a report there. If you wanted to report on how much VAT you want to reclaim on, you can do so here. You can also do it via project work or any other report that you could probably think of. We can produce. But just to give you an example of what one of our reports look like, I'm just going to go over to here into detailed ledger, and I'm just going to go ahead, choose the time frame. And essentially all this is going to do is give me all of the details of some of our claims that we've processed over this time period. As you can see, because this is a demo system, we have, only one person doing it. But here you can see that all of the data from the claims during this time period is all here. And we can see a total here at the bottom. If I wanted to, and I wanted to make this maybe a little bit more visually pleasing, or maybe I wanted to just understand where some of the data is being spent, or sorry, where some of the money has been spent, what I would do is just drag and drop. So project code you can use, or maybe I want to do it by GL code just to understand which category it has the most amount of expenditure, or maybe I want to do both. Maybe I want to do project code and I want to do GL code. I can do so, and I can just drag and drop that here. And essentially what this has now done is now grouped this data, so it's a lot easier to understand. And then still, if I go to the right here, we can see that it's still giving me a total for the individual categories and also a total during this time frame. And then what I can do, and like I said, everything can be done within the Web Expenses platform. So anything that's done with spend management or expense management is all within this platform. We can go ahead and just export this either as a PDF file, as an Excel file, or a CSV. So I am conscious of time because, yeah, so I'm just going to go ahead and stop sharing this and go back to the presentation just to sort of wrap up some of the information I've said. I know I've kind of given you a very one-stop shop of everything, so you might have more questions. So feel free to ask them in the chat, or if at any point you want a demonstration, reach out. But what I'll do is just stop sharing that and I'll go back to the presentation very quickly. Right. Yeah, so I know I sort of touched on some of our integrations that we have in place at the moment. We do have other integrations. So again, if you have any questions on this, do feel free to reach out. But with Sage Intacct in particular, we actually have a two-way direct integration. So not only do we send the accounts payable, the journal entries, the expense reports, both for out of pocket personal spend, but also for the credit card information, we can send that all into Intacct. We can also retrieve the data from Intacct as well. So going back to some of the project works, maybe you have projects and sub-projects or vendor and sub-vendor within Intacct itself. We can extract that data. Again, employees, customers, categories, location, departments, suppliers, anything, we can pretty much retrieve the data directly from Intacct and mirror everything so that it just makes it a lot more streamlined and it's a lot easier for you to then process claims because you're not replicating any of the data. We're just extracting it all. We also have an integration with Sage 200. So this isn't a two-way integration, so we can't actually pull the data from 200, but we can send, again, the accounts payable both for personal spend and also for the credit card data as well. But what we can do, and a lot of the time what we do during implementation, we do still have a look at what's within your Sage 200. And essentially what we can do, we can just mirror everything that you've got there if that's what you choose to do. So that's on integrations. Sorry. Now, just to touch on something that we've only just rolled out only a couple months ago now, which is our expense cards. Now, what is an expense card? Essentially, all it is just an add-on that we provide from Webexpenses, and it essentially so any employee can have this when they're signed up to Webexpenses, but it just gives you a little bit more control on what's being spent. So instead of having a credit card, essentially what you would do is you would put a load of money into your Webexpenses account, and then within that pot, you would allocate that to specific users. So for example, if I had a very specific business trip, which I knew was going to cost me £200 for the entire trip, instead of me needing a credit card, or instead of me putting it on my out-of-pocket expense because that's quite a lot of money to come out in one go, I would use the corporate card, and they would set a spend limit of £200, and they would essentially allocate £200 out of the pot of money towards me. So this, again, there's so many different use cases as to why this is useful, but essentially it's just giving you that final level of control, because not only do we support personal spend, we also support credit cards, but then there's also the options to have the Webexpenses corporate card, because you can activate this for a user as of when they need it. Again, you might have new hires who are joining, maybe you want to allocate them a card. So there's so many different use cases, and again, if you have any questions on the expense cards themselves, I'm happy to do a whole separate session and go through exactly how it might fit your business. But it's also just to show that we pretty much cover everything. What's also interesting about the expense cards, this was actually recommended on some. So we have something called a product portal, and essentially it's almost like a community where people upload recommendations and then people vote against the recommendations, add their comments. So for example, the expense cards, that was one that was actually on the product portal. So we worked as a team to actually implement this as an entire product line for us. But it did initially come from the product portal, where within the community, people were wanting this, and there were a lot of use cases as to why people wanted this. And lo and behold, here we go. We've actually got this as a product now. So just to give you another better idea, as we're not just an out-of-box solution, we do really tailor the entire solution from yourselves as an individual to make sure that you're getting everything out of it, but also all the way to if you just wanted something added extra, and there are other customers who also wanted it added extra, we can accommodate that as well. So I know, I've been speaking for quite a while now. So just to give you sort of a wrap up of everything that we cover, and this is only just highlighting some of the features as you may start the implementation or as we're starting the process of everything. We will also indicate or show exactly how we can help you specifically. But yeah, some of the key features: the credit card reconciliation, carbon tracking, our integrations, the mileage tracking, the OCR scanning technology, the custom reporting, a customized approval flow, and also just making sure that you're fully compliant. So I think, yeah, overall, that's everything that we can help with. And thank you so much for listening. As I said, the three key areas and the ways that we help, especially towards the expense management space, is by automating your expenses, so improving that efficiency, enforcing your policies to make sure that the company is compliant, and also giving you that final level of control over your expenditure and that visibility over your expenditure as well. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for listening, and I'll hand over to Lewis.
Thanks very much. Yeah, it's brilliant to see the system. Very good to see kind of how it all works and all those areas. I think that we've got a couple of questions that have come in. Gary's got two. Start from the top there. One of the questions is, does the system allow for exceeding the mileage payout 45p per mile? And does it reduce to the limit once the 10,000 miles have actually been reached?
Yes, yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention that. So even the one I have in place, so we can set it, so we have it set, so 45 pence a mile. And then once they reach 10,000 miles, it will then drop down to 25 pence. And again, that's customizable as well. So we have that in place, and I have that placed in my demo system as well. But if they wanted their own customizable rate of, if they hit 10,000, then it will drop down.
Sure.
That's something we fully support as well.
Perfect. Okay. I've got one here that says, obviously touching on the reporting you just covered, is a reporting suite an extra charge?
No, so everything's included within one price. We can talk about, so we price via active user, and then again, I can go into more detail when the time comes. But essentially, within our pricing model, there's no hidden cost. We have one subscription price. Within that, you get the carbon tracking, you get the OCR, you get all of the approval flow, and you get the entire reporting suite included within that as well.
Brilliant. Okay. Is it only MasterCard, or do you have Visa expense cards? And can we choose which scheme, Visa, MasterCard, Amex?
So with the expense card specifically, it's only the MasterCard that we have in place because that's who we use as our provider.
Cool.
If they had credit cards of their own within Visa, Amex, and MasterCard, we do have the direct link if it's their own personal card. But with the expense card at the moment, it's just the MasterCard because that's who we use as a provider.
Okay, brilliant. And then another one here, how scalable is the system? How many users? Is there a minimum, or what does it look like?
Yeah, so at the moment we have a minimum user count of 3. In terms of scalability, there's no real limit of how many users we can have. We work with loads of different types and sizes of businesses. We have obviously a lot of very, very large corporate businesses, but then we also we also cater to SMBs as well. So there's no real, we don't really have like a specific user range that we sort of go towards.
Sure.
In terms of scalability, yeah, we can go bigger and bigger and bigger if we need to.
Brilliant. Perfect. Obviously, being for cloud as well, what kind of onboarding and support is provided to sort of get the teams actually started?
Yeah, so I mean, from the moment that they're, as soon as you're ready to sign with us, you get an account manager aligned to you. The same way, so it doesn't matter if it comes through Qmulus or anyone else, you get full dedicated support. So from the moment that you start the implementation, you also get training on how to use the system, and we pretty much won't let you go until you're ready to use the system. And then if at a later point, um, there's more training that's needed within a very particular part of the system, then we also offer that as a service. So you have an account manager, you get full support also included, and that's all within the same price as well.
Brilliant. Okay, perfect. Right, there's a couple of questions that have just come in, but they've gone again. So we can always touch upon those at a later date. I don't think there's any more coming in now.
Okay.
Like Manish said, any questions that anyone has, we're more than happy to go into some more detail. Obviously, if it's just jumping on a quick call, they're no obligation calls, so it could be 5-10 minutes, whatever you want to ask. If you want to see something in a little bit more detail, something might be a little bit more bespoke to your business. I appreciate every business runs in their own different ways, so we're more than happy to jump on a quick call, go through this, see if it's actually kind of feasible for you. As Manish said, there's a reason why there's so many people using this system, and it is just fantastic. So, obviously, biased opinion on my part. Please feel free to get in touch. I know we were going to do. We're going to send out the webinar at the end. So if you wanted to watch back, you want to share it to someone that you feel might be worth seeing it, definitely worth jumping on that as well. What we'll do as well is we'll run a little bit of a randomizer on everyone that's attended, and we'll get in touch with you to send some merch out for you as well. But if there's not any more questions, if there's anything else we can go through, that's pretty much it. So thanks very much. Go on,
Sorry,
Manish.
there is just one thing I
Oh
forgot.
yeah, go for it.
So off the back of this, we are offering an incentive,
Okay.
which is so anyone who anyone who chooses to book a demo with us or chooses to sign up with us off the back of this webinar, we can go through the logistics of how it will work within Qmulus, but we are offering 15 months for the price of 12. So essentially, you'll get the
Oh,
first
brilliant.
3 months
Okay.
free. But yeah, so that's off the back of this webinar. So yeah, if you have any interest, please, yeah, reach out to Lewis, and then we can make sure that's
Nice.
organized.
Perfect. Exclusive deal that I didn't even know about. There we go. Perfect. So yeah, everything will be sent out by our marketing team, and we'll get in touch. We look forward to speaking to you all soon. Thanks very much.
Great. Thank you.
Cheers, everyone.
Cool. Lewis, do you want to just stop the recording as well?
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I gave you the host.
Yeah. Do
It
I
then
need to stop it? Or have you got the
now
host
I've
now?
just reclaimed it,
Oh, okay, fine.
and now yeah, it should all be stopped.